This new AI video model called Seedance, made by the team behind TikTok, just a few days ago dethroned Veo3 as the best AI video model out there. And the best part is that it can be 25 times cheaper versus Veo3 and is now possible to be automated via n8n. Because if you're not aware, Veo3 has been the most powerful AI video model since Google announced it just a few weeks ago, because it can create quality and genuinely entertaining videos that reach millions of views on socials. This new ASMR channel, for example, has videos made with Veo3 already reaching millions of views and actually providing quality content that people are loving. And they only have a few videos here so far, but already at 70,000 followers. So you can just imagine if you have a video automation like this powering this account, how impactful this would be. Because what you can do is set up this workflow once and it will generate new video ideas for you every day or even every hour, complete with video prompts that are then passed along to the Seedance model to generate clips along with sounds that match those clips that are then stitched together to create videos like this. And all of those videos were all auto-generated by this AI system. The good news is we're using low-code tools, so really anyone can get started with this, even if you're a complete beginner and have never coded before. In fact, if you can operate a mouse and a keyboard, you're already halfway there. And learning about AI automation is also one of the best investments you can make with your time right now, given the demand for it, which you can clearly see if you hop over at Google Trends. So take the next few minutes to dive in and stick around until the end if you have the time, if you want to learn about Seedance and to learn the skills that will take you to the edge of what's possible now with AI. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Jay. We run Robo Labs, which is our agency arm, helping mostly content businesses use AI in meaningful ways. And also the RoboNuggets community, which is our AI education program. We have 1,600 plus members now, who are all AI practitioners located across the world. And here in RoboNuggets, the mission is quite simple. It's to make AI easy to learn for anyone, no matter what your background is. And in fact, to make it as easy as possible, I'll be uploading this template in our group, which includes this instruction on how you can set this up for your own space. And the good news is if you have that file, you can just import it into n8n, which is the tool that we're using, and it will automatically create that workflow for you without you even having to lift a finger. So feel free to grab that template just in the link below. All right, let's dip into this. So as mentioned in the intro, Seedance is this new AI video model by ByteDance, the company behind TikTok, which got released only a few days ago, but immediately dethroned the Veo3 in the Arena Elo video quality benchmarks. Which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically this system where people are blind voting between two different video generation models, and the models that win the most against other video models get a higher ranking score, similar to chess where players also get a ranking score based on the opponents that they defeat. And in fact, this Elo score that they used is directly inspired by the Elo rating system in chess. And you can see there's already a large enough sample size here with the Seedance model appearing in more than 20,000 blind voting matchups, and now it has a higher score than Veo3, which means that people prefer the videos that they generate more times than Google's model. But the even better news with Seedance is the fact that it is available at a fraction of the cost of Veo3. So to make it easy, I just summarized in this slide the cost in USD for 1 second of video generation for Seedance versus Veo3 if you were to implement this in n8n. And as we went through in the last video, Veo3 is actually costing 75 cents per second of video generation. But with Seedance, if you were to generate a 720p video, that would only be 6 cents per second, which is 12 times cheaper. And if you're only generating, say, for mobile and are okay with 480p, it's actually only 3 cents per second, which is 25 times cheaper than Veo3. So not only is it a better video model, it's also much cheaper, which is why I think the release of this model is quite a big deal. So now if we go through our automation workflow, this may look complex, but it's actually not that complicated to understand because you can see that the framework of how it's set up is quite simple. So if we start at the top, essentially these nodes would be our input section where we have two agents that would generate ideas and prompts for us, which are then fed to our step one, whose job it is to generate the clips for us using the Seedance model. And since Seedance doesn't have native sound generation built into it, we just have these extra nodes here to generate sounds that complement those videos. And then we have a third step that just stitches those clips that we generated together so that we can get a longer video for each generation. And then the very last node here is just to store our video into Google Sheets, which is our logging tool for this case. So if we just go ahead and run that workflow and wait for it to finish so that we can go through the output together, and I can explain all the relevant parts so that you can set it up and tweak it yourself. So with that automation now having finished running, it was able to generate this video. And what we'll do next is to just go through each of the steps so that you can understand how it was able to generate this clip automatically. And if we start at the very top, basically you have a trigger node here, which if you haven't used n8n before, a trigger node is essentially the node that declares how often and in what way your automation is triggered. And so this one is just a simple one that tells us that this automation runs once per day. So that's very simple. And then the node that follows that is this Ideas AI agent, which is one of the most popular nodes in n8n because it allows us to configure an agent from within this no-code tool. So if we just open that, you'll see there's a lot of information here, which again, if you're new to n8n, it's probably good to take a step back to quickly take you through the common design of working for n8n across every node. Because if you look at these sections, it's all very simple. There's essentially 3 regions here where you have the input area here at the left. And what this region contains is basically all of the data and information that is coming from previous nodes that is being passed along to this specific node that you are configuring. And here in the green area is the configuration for your specific node. And then with the information that's being passed to this node and the configuration parameters that you have set, that node will now provide this output section here at the red area, which are then passed along to all the succeeding nodes within your workflow. So if we go back to our very first node, the Ideas AI agent, you'll see that the input here at the left is just some attributes coming from the schedule trigger because that was the node that was coming previously. And then we have the configuration for this agent here in the middle, which we'll go through in a bit. But you'll see that what this Ideas AI agent is doing is just giving us this output, which is a unique idea for our ASMR video, where we have a caption that our agent wrote, the core idea, an environment so that we can describe in which setting that video was shot, a short prompt for the sound so that we can pass that along later to our sound model, and then a production status, which you'll see in a bit why that's important. So the way by which every AI agent is set up is we have this user prompt, which you can imagine as sort of like a message that you send to the agent, similar to how you send messages to ChatGPT. And here you can see it's very simple. It's just a command to give us an idea about this specific niche, which if you read through that, that's just basically the ASMR niche that we are trying to replicate. And then apart from the user prompt, each AI agent would also have a system prompt, which you can see here. So if we just expand that, you'll see that this system prompt just outlines this AI agent's role in life. So you can read through this in your own time, but you'll see that it just provides a role for this agent, as well as a few rules to make sure that the output it provides us is aligned to what we want. So feel free to tweak that in your own time. But that's good because now we have this idea that was generated for this specific run of our automation. So if we click away, you'll see that the next node is just a simple Google Sheets node. And that's just important because now that you have generated your idea, it's probably a good move to log that idea into a spreadsheet so that you don't lose it. So you can see that the configuration for this Google Sheet is quite simple. I basically have it connected to this document called Seedance, which if we go to that Google Sheet, is just a simple spreadsheet that has columns for our idea, a column for our caption, a column for the production status, as well as the prompts that we just generated using that previous agent. And it's just good to log these generations so that when this workflow has created the final video, the automation will just mark this row as done, and it will proceed to populate this Google Sheet so that we have a proper tracking of our ideas as well as video generations. So if you go back to n8n, you'll see that each of those columns that we viewed, we're just mapping them based on what our Ideas AI agent has provided us. So for example, this idea, if I delete it real quick, you'll see that it is just coming from this input section, which is dragged here on the configuration. And for this specific run, it is giving us a preview of that here at the bottom. And each of those columns are properly mapped as well, except for the final output where we will be storing the final video once this workflow has generated it. Now you may notice the ID is this Excel formula here. And that's by design so that if you go to the Google Sheet, you can see that the Excel formula is being stored here when this node runs. And that just translates to an ID here for our tracking. And then you can also see that the different values that our Ideas agent just created have been properly stored here as well. So there, that is the purpose of that Google Sheet node. So if we click away, we now can proceed to our next agent that we've set up, which if you open that up, you'll see that we named it as the Prompts AI agent, because what this agent's job is to turn those ideas into multiple prompts. For this run, we ask for 3 video prompts based on the previous idea. So you'll see here in the output that from this one idea of a brilliant ruby shaped like a strawberry being halved, we expanded that into 3 different scenes that would serve as our video prompts that would be fed to Seedance. So you have scene 1 here, scene 2, and scene 3, which are all different variations of that one idea so that we can have different iterations when we pass that along to Seedance. And then similar to our first agent, the prompts AI agent is also set up similarly, where we have a user prompt, which is fairly simple. We're just asking for 3 video prompts based on the previous idea. So that's like the message that you are sending to ChatGPT. But for the agent to be guided on what it should do, you always have this system prompt, which again, if you expand that, you have a pretty detailed prompt here around this agent's role, some rules around the prompts that it generates. And if you scroll down here, you'll see that there are some green text here. And if it's a green text, all that means is that it's a dynamic value in n8n. So if you view the window here at the right, which is the result, and scroll down, you'll see that for this specific run, the actual system prompt that it used dynamically changed based on the idea that we just generated in the previous agent. So once again, you'll see here the brilliant ruby shaped like a strawberry being halved, which our previous node just generated, which is what we need so that the prompts that this agent will generate would be specific to this idea, to this environment, as well as this sound. So that's good. So if we click away, that is now the input section's purpose, because by the end of this row, we now have 3 prompts that we are ready to feed into Seedance, which you will see in this generate clips step. So if we follow along, the next node we have here is this node that we named as unbundle prompts, because that is basically its purpose. It takes these 3 scene prompts that we have in the input section, which at the moment is grouped as one item in n8n, but just unbundles them so that we can ungroup them into individual items in n8n's instance. And you'll see in a bit why that's important, but essentially, if you have them individually unbundled in n8n, then you can pass along those items one by one into Seedance so that you can generate individual clips for each of these prompts. So the configuration here, this one's a code node, which allows you to just add custom node here. And this looks complex, and I think it actually is. But the good news is you don't have to write it yourself. In fact, I just asked ChatGPT to write this script for me. So if you want to understand what this all means, then you can also just throw this into ChatGPT, and it can explain to you line by line what this JavaScript code is about. But that's good because now we have our individual prompts separated into 3 items. And so now we can proceed into this next node, which if we open that up, you'll see that its purpose is to now create the clips using the Seedance model. And if you haven't used this node before, it's essentially an HTTP request node, which is one of the most used nodes in n8n because it's the primary way by which we can use third-party tools like Seedance in this case in n8n. And just to show you how it's configured, you have a method here which is set to post, because what we'll be doing in this case is we'll be posting a request for Seedance to create the clips for us, similar to how you would post a mail, for example. So if you're posting a mail, obviously you need to have an address to post it to, and so this URL serves as the address in this case. And you can see we have the Seedance model here, but you'll realize that the provider for us in this case is this URL called wavespeed.ai. So if you go to wavespeed.ai, you'll see that what they do is they aggregate a lot of these AI video and image generation models for us to use. And if you haven't used one of these before, basically an analogy for it is like an app store, but for AI models. So instead of going to each of these AI models' website and learning how they work, you can just learn how to use a service like wavespeed.ai, and you'll be able to use those same models much more easily and much faster as well. And it's actually my first time using wavespeed.ai, but the good thing that they did here is that they are, I think, the first to implement Seedance Pro in their service. And if you browse through it, there's a lot of iterations of this Seedance model in Wavespeed. But for what we'll be doing, we'll be using this 480p model because it's also the cheapest while also giving us the Pro version, which is the one that topped the Veo3. So if we click on that, what you can do is just click on this API tab, and you'll be able to get all the elements that you need from this post request example. So for instance, that URL address that we pasted in n8n, I got that URL exactly from this section of Wavespeed. So now if we go back to n8n, since we are posting a request, now that we know where to post our request to, we also need to understand what it is that we are trying to request, right? So if you scroll down to the bottom, here at the body section, this is just where you declare to Wavespeed what you're requesting for in the first place. So if we expand that, this is all pretty self-explanatory. Essentially, you have the aspect ratio here, which is 9:16 to give us a vertical video, a duration of 10 seconds, and a prompt, which again, you can see it's green text, so it's a dynamic value. And so in reality, how that's translating is we're just passing along a prompt composed of the video theme, which is the brilliant ruby. You have the more detailed action of what's going to happen, which our prompt AI agent generated. And then we have just some direction on where the video is shot, which is the environment prompt that we had previously, if you remember. And so in reality, when this workflow run, these are all the specs that we just provided to Wavespeed. And then if you click on this right arrow, you can shuffle through the two other items that we have passed along to wave speed as well, because remember, we have 3 clips that we're trying to generate. And so if we click away, you'll see that our output is also 3 items. It says a status code of 200, which if you're in the world of APIs, that basically means it's a success, which is always a good thing. Now, if you run this yourself and you're seeing a credential error, it's possible that you have not set up your credentials yet properly. And if we go back to our posting a mail analogy from earlier, if you have the address of where to post your mail to, you have the contents of that request, what you would also need is some form of stamp in order to signify that you have properly paid for this request that you are sending. And so you can see here that I have my wave speed credentials set here, which if we click on this pen icon so that I can show you what it looks like, you'll see that we just have 2 values here, which again, we just learned how to set up by looking at wave speed's documentation. So you'll see the name here is called authorization. And so I just got that coming from this example that wave speed gave. And then you also have the value here, which as per wave speed needs to be typed as bearer space followed by your API key. You just need to make sure it's typed exactly as this, along with the capitalization, as well as the space after bearer, and then followed by your API key, which in wave speed you can find here under access keys at the top. But just note that your API key is like a password, so you should keepsake it, because anyone who has your API key would be able to use your account and the funds that you have in that account as well. So here in my example, I just provided a mock value for illustration purposes. So once you have that set up, that's good, because you actually just need to do that once and you'll be set, and you can use that for succeeding nodes and future workflows as well. So if we reinspect the output of this node, you'll see that yes, we were able to post our request to Seedance, but you'll see that we don't have the clips yet to preview. And the reason why that is because this success is telling you that you're successful in requesting the service, but Seedance is still hard at work with generating those clips under the hood. And so if we click away, you'll see that the next node here is a simple wait node, which if we open that, you'll see that what we are literally doing is waiting for 240 seconds for Seedance to generate our clips. So that's very simple. And once that time has passed, then we move on to this next HTTP request, which if we open that up, all that really does is to get the clips that we just generated for us. And so now you'll see that the method we've set here is get, and the address that we're getting that from is this URL, again, coming from WaveSpeed's documentation, but this time containing this dynamic value, which translated into this longer URL. And if we shuffle through that, that just lists down the 3 generations that we did in WaveSpeed. And then you'll see here, we also use the same WaveSpeed credentials. And once that node is successful, we now have these 3 outputs that contains 3 URLs ending in .mp4. So what you can do is you just copy that, paste that into any tab, and that will just download the clip for you to preview. And here you'll see that's the very first clip that we generated. So there, you just use Seedance to generate some clips. And so now the remaining steps here are in a way optional, but it's just to illustrate to you how to add sounds to those clips that we just saw and how to stitch them together so that we can have a video that's a bit longer. So if we dive into step 2 here, you'll see that this is another HTTP request. And if you open that up, this should be familiar to you now. We're once again just posting a request to create some sounds for us in this case. And the model that we'll be using is this model called Audio, which basically takes a video clip and layers sound effects on top of that at a very low cost. And here in the URL, you can also see that the service that we are using in this case is this website called Fal.ai, which if you go to their website, you'll see that they're basically kind of like WaveSpeed, but we use them a lot because they have so many models here. I think they have like 250 plus already. And they also have some of the cheapest implementations of these models, which is always appreciated. So if you just type Audio there, you'll find the sound model that we're going to use. And if you click on that, again, click on API, change the table of contents into HTTP because that is what n8n is using. And if you go into this example for submit a request, you'll see that the URL that we just used is available here. So that is exactly where I copied the URL in this create sounds node. And then for the credential, it's the same thing. But if you open that, you'll see that the name is once again authorization, but this time the format of Fal.ai is key followed by a space followed by your API key. So it's different just because it's a different service. And once again, if you go to Fal.ai's documentation, I just learned that by looking at this section here. And to find your API key in Fal.ai, you can just go to this API keys section in your dashboard. So once you have that credential set up, you'll now be able to connect to Fal.ai, which we'll be using for the sounds as well as the stitching of the video. So it's very useful. I think the last thing to just talk about in this section is this body, which is exactly what we are trying to request from Fal.ai. So if we open that up, it's again very simple. You just have a guiding prompt here. I just put in ASMR soothing sound effects to guide it for our niche You can change or delete that if you want. And then you'll see we have a dynamic value here, getting the sound coming from our prompts AI agent. So for this specific run, it translates to this sound that we just generated from before. We have a duration of 10 seconds for each clip. And then most importantly, we have this video URL, which is directly coming from the previous node and is basically the MP4 URL that we just previewed from a while ago. So once again, you can shuffle through it and you'll see that we are passing along those 3 clips so that Audio can add sounds to them. And when that node runs, you'll see that the output tells you that these requests are now in queue. So Audio is now hard at work with adding sounds to those clips. So if we click away, you'll see once again that we have another wait node because we are literally waiting for 60 seconds for Audio to layer those sounds on top of our clips. And if you go to the next node, we are once again just doing a get request so that we can get those clips back now with the sounds layered. So we have this URL for Audio, again with a dynamic value for the request ID, which File AI provided to us so that we can properly track the request that we just submitted. And you'll see for the output that we now have 3 items here corresponding to the 3 videos that now have sounds on them. So if you copy any of these and again, paste them into any tab in your browser, it'll download the file that you can preview, but now with sounds that Audio just layered on top of the clips for us. So that's sounding pretty good. And if you're curious, Audio's cost is very cheap. It's only like 0.001 per second. So it's 1/10 of a cent, which is very economical. So now that you have these 3 clips complete with sounds, the only remaining job to be done is to stitch them together automatically as well. So that is the final step that we are doing here. So if we just proceed to the next node, you'll see that we have another code node that if you open that up, all that really does is get our 3 MP4 files, which are existing as separate unbundled items, and then grouping them into one item in n8n. Because that's what we need in order to stitch them together in the next step. And so we just have a short piece of code here, which again, I just asked ChatGPT to write. But now using these video URLs, if we proceed to the next step, we have another HTTP request, which is to sequence or stitch our video. So it's another post request, but this time using this FFmpeg service. And if you haven't used FFmpeg before, it's basically a well-known model or service that allows us to do video editing work automatically. And the great thing about File AI is that they actually have an integration with that, which allows us to use FFmpeg quite easily. You'll see that the cost for this is very cheap. It's like 0.0002 per compute second, which in the end you'll see a summary of how much all of these costs so that you can have a reference. But anyway, if we go back to n8n, you'll see that we have the URL for that service as our request address. Our authorization remains the same. And then for the actual request that we are making, we just have this custom instruction, which if we open that, this is just as per File AI's documentation on how they use FFmpeg. But what this basically does is it just lists down the different clips one by one, provides a timestamp and duration for each one, and then tells FFmpeg to stitch them together to create just one video. So once that node has run, you'll see that the request is once again in queue. And once again, we just have another wait node where we are literally waiting for 60 seconds for FFmpeg to stitch our videos together. And finally, another get request so that we can get our final video from this URL from File.ai's documentation with this specific request ID that File AI gave us from the previous step so that we can properly track which video is ours. And when this node completes, what you'll get is this final video URL that again ends in .mp4. And if you paste in any tab in your browser, that would once again download that you can preview, but this time it is now 30 seconds long, has the sounds, and has all our clips properly stitched together. And you're done. You now have the final video ready for you. And so this final step is to properly log that URL. So if we open this, it's just another Google Sheets node that is once again connected to our document. And all this really does is it's trying to find the row to update in our Google Sheet, which if you remember, we have it here in our Google Sheet. So it's trying to find this row specifically, and it's marking the production column as done, similar to what it just did here in this sheet. And then finally, most importantly, it logged our video URL into this Google Sheet so that we have a proper logging of where to find this video. And there you are done. So if you set this workflow to run, let's say every day, it will just create videos for you automatically and log them into this Google Sheet one by one, which you can either publish yourself, or if you want to auto-publish that as well, then you can just take this Google Sheet and connect it to a publishing automation similar to this previous tutorial that we did. That basically takes those URLs from the Google Sheet and posts them to all the social platforms that you want, including TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts. And there you go, you just learned how to set up an automation using Seedance, the new top video model. And if you need a summary of the costs, I just made a slide for your reference. Basically, to create that 30-second video via Seedance, it was only 90 cents, which is so much cheaper. Had we used Veo3, that would have costed us $22.5. As I mentioned, adding the sounds is very cheap. It's only 3 cents to do all of that. And then stitching clips together is almost negligible. It's less than a cent at this point. So in total, 93 cents to create that video automatically, which is not that bad. And is also pointing to the trend that I've been sharing with our community for a while now. As time progresses and this technology develops, we'll slowly but surely see a downward trend on costs. Obviously, there's still a fixed cost per month, which is n8n for this case, but that would be non-incremental if you're already using n8n anyway. But the existence of Seedance is very good news for us. In fact, the only glaring thing I think that it is lacking is the capability to produce voice that Veo3 does quite well. So hopefully in the future, given the success of Veo3, we'll see a lot more models go towards that direction. So if you like this lesson, I encourage you to like and subscribe because that helps us a lot to give out more of this free knowledge. And in fact, this workflow, we'll be posting it at our free network, which you can find just in the link below. I'll be posting it right after this video, so it will be in a post similar to this, and you just need to find this file attached to the post and you'll be able to get it. And also, some of our community members alerted me about this, but apparently some people are trying to sell the workflows that we are anyway giving away for free, and they're trying to sell it as their own. So just be wary of these people. There's probably more that we don't know, but thought I would mention that so that you are aware. And if in case you want to maximize your AI learning and also be part of a community that's also growing with AI, then check out the RoboNuggets community. We have more than 1,600 AI practitioners now across the globe who also share a lot of paid opportunities and partnership collaborations if that's something you're keen about. And we're also doing a couple of meetups around the world, which is something I'm personally excited about. And of course, you'll find here dozens of other lessons around artificial intelligence and automation to let you upskill in this new domain. And I hope you learned something new with this video. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.